Chapter 3360. Nether Blood Sea. Holy Ground Land. In Wu Dao's original body's Yuan Wu world, 3,000 great Daos crisscrossed, traversing heaven and earth, supporting a world. Yin and Yang separated, giving birth to all things. Yuan Wu world. It had evolved to the extreme, no different from the 3,000 worlds he was in. However, it was much more immature. After all, it had just been born and perfected. As for the real 3,000 worlds, it had evolved for countless years to grow to its current scale. In Yuan Wu world, with a thought, Wu Dao's original body could evolve mountains, rivers, flowers, and trees, even all living things. When cultivating to this realm, although Wu Dao's original body had not reached Dao integration, it had still reached the level of eternal life. As long as Yuan Wu world was not destroyed, he would not die. Wu Dao's original body speculated that his current combat strength was not weaker than a saint's. If Yuan Wu world continued to grow, perhaps one day, it would reach the level of 3,000 worlds. However, the birth of Yuan Wu world was much later than the 3,000 worlds. After a long period of time, no matter how it evolved, Yuan Wu world could not catch up to the 3,000 worlds. The strength of Wu Dao's original body could not be compared to the 6 Taisha primordial spirits that were born at the beginning of the 3,000 worlds. Wu Dao's original body pondered for a long time in the Holy Ground Land, but he still could not find a way to solve it. When Qinglian's original body obtained the Black Lotus of Destruction and transformed into the chaotic sacred body, a long memory belonging to chaotic Qinglian also poured into his mind. With the help of chaotic Qinglian's memories, he seemed to have experienced the evolution and transformation of the 3,000 worlds. From nothing to something, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to all things. He saw chaotic Qinglian refining the universe creation diagram and evolving the 3,000 worlds. It seemed to want to do something, but in the end it failed. He even felt a trace of regret in chaotic Qinglian. What was chaotic Qinglian feeling regretful about? This might be the key to breaking the situation. The universe creation diagram was born from the 3,000 worlds. It could only follow the evolution of the 3,000 worlds and could not be reversed. The birth of Yuan Wu world was an anomaly. It jumped out of the 3 realms and was not in the 5 elements. A thought flashed through the mind of Wu Dao's original body. In other words, the evolution of the origin martial world could break free from the shackles and rules of the 3,000 worlds. If the Yuan Wu world evolves normally and is unable to catch up with the 3,000 worlds, perhaps I can try to reverse the process. A crazy idea suddenly appeared in the mind of Wu Dao's main body. After his Wu Dao was perfected in the world of Yuan Wu, the world of Yuan Wu had become more and more powerful. He had already reached the end. Now he was going to push back Wu Dao. Pushing in the opposite direction did not mean going backwards. Instead, with the Yuan Wu world at the end of Wu Dao as the starting point, he traced back to the origin of the universe. His Yuan Wu world had not evolved naturally. Instead, it had been formed by his comprehension of the 3,000 great Daos, fusing them into it and perfecting it. Since that was the case, perhaps he could try to reverse engineer the Yuan Wu world, trace back to the beginning of the universe's evolution, and search for the most ancient power. This path would be filled with death. Even Wu Dao himself wasn't sure if he could continue walking. This was because if he wanted to reverse engineer Wu Dao, the first step was to destroy all 3,000 great Daos in the Yuan Wu world. He was Yuan Wu world, and Yuan Wu world was him. If all 3,000 great Daos were destroyed, an incomparably terrifying power would erupt. Whether Yuan Wu world could withstand it, what it would become in the end, whether he could still survive, no one knew. Once he took this step, Wu Dao's main body would have no way out. There were only 2 results, life or death. A hint of determination flashed in the eyes of Wu Dao's main body. With a thought, the 3,000 great Daos that crisscrossed in the Yuan Wu world were all destroyed. Boom! The 3,000 great Daos were destroyed, erupting with an unparalleled power. A huge ball of light bloomed, dazzling and resplendent, instantly swallowing the entire holy ground. The huge wave of air even spread to the Nether Blood Sea. This sea of blood condensed from the blood of a saint set off stormy waves and evaporated in the blink of an eye. Countless auras and corpses were all sucked into that ball of light. Wu Dao's main body's physical body and bloodline also turned into nothingness in an instant. The entire medium-class world shook violently, and all the races were shocked. If not for the holy ground and the nether blood sea blocking it, that terrifying power just now could even pierce through the medium-class world. After the huge explosion, the void gradually returned to calm. After an unknown period of time, the light in the void gradually dimmed. A ball of chaos chi floated in the sky above the holy ground. It spun continuously, forming a huge vortex that grew larger and larger. In the center of the chaos vortex, there was a remnant wisp of life consciousness. As the chaos vortex grew larger, the wisp of life consciousness gradually stabilized. Gradually, Wu Dao's main body appeared again. He was in the chaos, wearing a purple robe. He looked around, and the confusion in his eyes gradually faded. 2 balls of purple flames burned in his eyes. The Yuanwu world had evolved in reverse, and had already become a vast chaotic universe that was separated by heaven and earth. The chaos-verse seemed small, but every speck of dust within it could transform into a world of its own. As the 2 balls of purple flames rose in the eyes of Wu Dao's main body, light and darkness appeared in the chaos. The natural evolution of the chaotic universe was the first to condense the Great Tao of Yin and Great Tao of Yang. Immediately after, Yin and Yang intertwined and formed the 5 elements. The Great Tao of Metal, Great Tao of Wood, Water, Fire and Earth were born as well. Wu Dao's main body was in the chaotic universe, but it was as though he was uninvolved. He looked down at the evolution of the chaotic universe from above, and a strange feeling rose in his heart. With a single thought, the Great Tao of Yin and Great Tao of Yang gained consciousness. 2 life forms were born in the chaos. They were illumination and nether glow. Wu Dao's main body looked at the Great Tao of the 5 elements. 5 life forms were born from the Great Tao of the 5 elements. A palm-sized snow-white tiger with a murderous aura glared at Wu Dao's main body, and bared its fangs with a fierce expression. A divine dragon that was as thick as an arm, and covered in green scales swam in the chaos. A black tortoise walked slowly towards Wu Dao's main body, in an extremely clumsy manner. A small fiery red sparrow flapped its wings and jumped, trying its best to fly. A strange beast was pitch black, and looked like a charcoal ball. It didn't look like anything, except for a pair of bright eyes that stared curiously at Wu Dao's main body. Wu Dao's main body sat casually on a rock. Looking at this scene, he couldn't help but laugh. The legendary sacred lords were just as immature when they were born. At this moment, the rock he was sitting on shook, and a wisp of life fluctuation came from it. Wu Dao's main body subconsciously stood up. Crack. There was a crisp sound. The rock cracked open, and a little fellow with a sharp mouth and monkey cheeks drilled out. Its eyes darted around, and when it saw Wu Dao's main body, it chirped nonstop as if it was saying something. Wu Dao's main body chuckled and said, "It's also your fortune." As soon as he said that, another Great Tao was born. The Great Tao of Creation. End of chapter. Chapter 3361. A speck of green appeared on the creation Great Tao. Another life was born. Wu Dao's main body looked at the 9 lives that were born in the primal chaos, and fell into deep thought. These 9 lives were equivalent to the 9 chaos holy spirits of the origin martial world. The origin martial world was outside of the 3 realms. It was an alternate world that did not enter the cycle of reincarnation. Therefore, the new 9 chaos holy spirits could be born. However, compared to the holy lords of the 3,000 worlds, the 9 chaos holy spirits born in the origin martial world were still extremely young. Their strength was far from reaching the great sage level. It was unknown how long it would take for them to grow up to be comparable to the holy lords of the 3,000 worlds. Of course, Wu Dao's main body had succeeded in reversing Wu Dao's main body. The second stage of the origin martial world's evolution was the current primal chaos universe. This primal chaos universe was the incarnation of Wu Dao's main body. Although the 9 chaos holy spirits were weak and young, Wu Dao's main body, who had created them with a thought, was already comparable to a great sage's strength. However, it was far from being comparable to a great sage. Only by being comparable to the 6 Taisha primordial spirits, or even surpassing them, could he resolve the chaos. The Taisha primordial spirits were even more ancient and powerful than the 9 chaos holy spirits. Wu Dao's main body tried many times, but he was unable to give birth to a life like the Taisha primordial spirits in this primal chaos universe. The origin martial world's level was not high enough. If the original origin martial world belonged to the first stage, then the current primal chaos universe belonged to the second stage. If he wanted to give birth to the Taisha primordial spirits in the origin martial world, he had to continue reversing Wu Dao, tracing back to the origin of the universe, returning to an even more ancient state of the universe. What would an even more ancient and primal universe be like? Wu Dao's main body fell into deep thought. He did not rashly attempt to destroy the current primal chaos universe. Reversing Wu Dao and tracing back to the beginning of the universe meant that every step he took was on the brink of death. One wrong step and he would die, and all his previous efforts would be for naught. When the 3,000 Grand Daos had been destroyed, the prime martial realm had been able to evolve into the chaos verse it was today. The main reason was because Qinglian's true body had obtained large chunks of Qinglian's memories. Moreover, he had come into contact with the 9 great chaotic holy spirits, and had even fought with the sacred masters. He had some understanding of the strength of the experts at this level. However, there was a deeper level of power. However, he had never come into contact with it. Destroying the chaos verse would unleash an enormous amount of power. Without an accurate direction, it was impossible for such an enormous power to evolve into an even more primitive and ancient universe. Wu Dao's main body gradually fell silent. He was waiting for an opportunity. He believed that this opportunity would definitely appear. After the battle in the Forbidden Space Zone, Su Zimo brought Dayu back to the Primal Chaos Sacred Land. In the Primal Chaos Sacred Land, there were still some opportunities that belonged to him. Su Zimo arrived at the last of the 4 Lotus Peaks. With a thought, he absorbed the remnant memories of this black mountain. At the very center of the Primal Chaos Sacred Land, the 4 Lotus Peaks surrounded a towering mountain that was far more imposing than the 4 Lotus Peaks. Originally, even Su Zimo could not get close to this towering mountain in the middle. However, after he obtained the Black Lotus of Destruction, the perfect Chaos Qinglian, and merged the memories of the 4 Lotus Peaks, this towering mountain did not resist him at all. In fact, he could even feel a sense of intimacy from the mountain peak, as if they were connected by blood. With a thought, Su Zimo's figure disappeared from the spot. In the next moment, a figure had already appeared on the lofty mountain. Su Zimo sat cross-legged on the mountain peak, and merged his divine sense into this mountain. 2 balls of purple flames gradually appeared in his eyes. So it's like this. A low murmur came from the mountain peak. In the blink of an eye, 10,000 years had passed. Since the battle in the Forbidden Space Zone 10,000 years ago, the Great Thousand World had welcomed a rare period of peace. Although the Great Thousand World was still full of killing and fighting, the various sacred lands had tacitly maintained peace, and there had been no conflicts. The 3 sacred lands that had been destroyed had also been developing and strengthening over the years. The 5 sacred lands had not suppressed or stopped this. However, this period of peace, in the eyes of some people, was the last calm before the storm. Ordinary living beings, even supremes, could not feel it. Only when one reached the level of a sage, and was in harmony with the Tao, could one feel the pressure of a storm. Uneasiness, depression. Even sages would occasionally feel a trace of inexplicable palpitations. This feeling had only appeared more than 6 billion years ago. And this time, it seemed to be more dangerous than that great turmoil. On this day, a loud sound came from the Primal Chaos Sacred Land. In the next moment, the sky above the Primal Chaos Sacred Land was filled with a large amount of Primal Chaos Qi. Inside, a jade-green lotus swayed and emitted an incomparably powerful aura. Heaven and earth shook, and the great Tao resonated. All the sages in the Great Thousand World felt something at this moment. A kind of power broke through some kind of limit, and suddenly rose above the 3,000 Great Tao. All the sages felt a trace of pressure, and a trace of threat at the same time. Someone has become a supreme sage. Who is it? In the direction of the Primal Chaos Sacred Land. Could it be Araki Takeshi? Impossible, right? 10,000 years ago, he had just stepped into the sage realm. Now he has taken another step and become a supreme sage? The experts of the 10,000 races did not know what had happened. Even most of the sages did not dare to believe it. Almost at the same time, the 5 sacred lords woke up from their seclusion. Araki Takashi has become a supreme sage? Even if he has the primal chaos sacred body and obtained the memories of primal chaos Qinglian, isn't it too fast to become a supreme sage in 10,000 years? I guess he has other opportunities. He has already stepped into the sage realm, and primal chaos Qinglian is flawless. What other opportunities can he have? Could it be? The 5 sacred lords quickly communicated with their divine senses and fell silent again. Life sacred land. Grandpa Mountain Elder, what happened? Many children gathered around the Mountain Elder and asked him questions. The Mountain Elder chuckled and said, Araki Takashi has become a supreme sage. Emperor Araki Takashi. Hearing the 2 words Araki Takashi, many children were excited. Lin Xuanji's stories about Araki Takashi, Daiyu, and the others were very widespread in the Great Thousand World. Especially in the human race, it had a great impact. After all, Araki Takashi was the emperor of the human race. Moreover, in the forbidden land of time and space, everyone had seen Araki Takashi turn the tide and save the paragons of the human race from danger. We haven't seen Emperor Araki Takashi and Sister Dai in a long time. We missed them. Take us to see them. Many children pestered the Mountain Elder and used all their tricks to coax and pester him. The Mountain Elder thought about it. Araki Takashi becoming a supreme sage was indeed a rare event. He should go and congratulate him. Okay, I'll take you there. Yay! All the children cheered. It's done. Outside a water curtain cave, the great sage of chaos looked in the direction of the primal chaos, sacred land and laughed. I haven't seen that monkey in a long time. Let's go and see. The great sage of chaos figure disappeared. End of chapter. Chapter 3362. The Chaotic Sacred Ground. On this day, the sacred hall was filled with music and was extremely lively. Apart from some cultivators from the chaotic sacred ground, there were also many ascenders from the middle realms. Many of them were old friends of Suzimo and Daiyu. For 10,000 years, the chaotic sacred ground had always been welcoming ascenders from the middle realms. Those ascenders had witnessed the Araki Takashi conquering the heavens and suppressing the master of the underworld. After learning that the chaotic sacred leader was the Araki Takashi emperor of the middle realms, they all chose to follow him. For example, experts like Kitsune, who ascended later, had long arrived at the chaotic sacred ground. Old friends who had ascended to the Great Thousand Worlds and were scattered all over the place. After witnessing the battle in the space-time forbidden ground, they also knew of Suzimo's whereabouts. They rushed over. However, all these years, Suzimo had been in seclusion. Although many old friends were reunited, they could not meet Suzimo. This time round, Suzimo came out of seclusion and arranged for the chaotic sacred ground to prepare a grand banquet for all his old friends to drink to their heart's content. Everyone had already gathered in the sacred hall. However, Suzimo still did not appear. Only Daiyu, who was the Tao companion of the chaotic sacred ground, and also the owner of the chaotic sacred ground, received the guests. Brother Su and Miss Dai have already become Tao companions, but there's no ceremony. Consider this banquet as a treat for us, Lin Xuanji said with a smile. Why isn't the main character here yet? Demoness Ji also rushed over from the ancestral fire sacred ground and asked with a blink. In her previous life, she was the daughter of the ancestral fire sacred master, Yan Ji. However, Demoness Ji did not change, and neither did her relationship with her old friends. She rushed over. When she saw all her old friends, she did not feel unfamiliar at all. Perhaps he just broke through and needs to stabilize his cultivation realm. Feng Cantillon guessed. Daiyu shook her head. He already came out of seclusion and left the chaotic sacred ground. He did not say where he was going and merely said that he would rush back later. Lin Xuanji snickered and winked. Could Brother Su have gone to look for a gift for you? When the three of them reunited in the great wide world, they had talked about this. At that time, Daiyu had jokingly asked Su Zimo to remember to give her a thoughtful gift. Lin Xuanji's eyes darted around as though he had thought of something. Leaning to Demoness Ji Yaoxue, he asked softly, "Why isn't Ji Yaoxue here?" As though she thought of something, Demoness Ji's eyes dimmed as she whispered, "Sister, might come as well." Little monkey. At this moment, a loud shout came from outside the temple. The great sage of chaos didn't have any image of a great sage at all. He shouted at the top of his voice, 10,000 years have passed, and you didn't even say anything about going back to see me. You really have no conscience." The great sage had descended. The clamor in the temple. There was a momentary pause. The hearts of all the experts trembled. A great saint was considered the pinnacle of existence in the vast thousand worlds. Even a sage could not show the slightest bit of disrespect in front of a great sage. "What are you looking at?" Sensing the gazes around him, the great sage of chaos glared and hollered, "Haven't you seen a monkey before?" Under the deterrence of the title of a great sage, everyone initially felt some pressure. However, when they heard that, they could not help but smile and relax. Gradually, the temple regained its liveliness just now. Now that the great sage of chaos had arrived personally, Daiyu could not afford to be negligent and prepared to greet him. The great sage of chaos waved it off casually. "There's no need to bow. I'm only here to freeload and didn't bring any gifts. I just wish the two of you have a monkey cough, baby soon. Sister Dai. Sister Dai." Right then, a few crisp shouts sounded from outside the temple. A group of children sprinted into the temple and ran towards Daiyu. Their faces were flushed, and they were extremely excited. Behind the children, a mountain elder in tattered white robes appeared and nodded at Daiyu with a smile. The Holy Lord of Life had arrived. Two great sages had arrived in succession. All of a sudden, another figure appeared at the entrance of the Chaos Temple. The woman was thin and had an indifferent expression, exuding an evil aura. Everyone in the temple suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. Evil Lord. Another great sage. And this great sage was the master of the beast path, one of the four paths. Even though the evil lord did not release any aura that belonged to a great sage, everyone could still feel an immense pressure. The evil lord looked around and frowned slightly. Finally, he looked at Daiyu and asked, "Where is he?" Daiyu shook her head and gave a simple explanation. The evil lord did not say anything and simply found a corner to sit down. He closed his eyes and did not speak to anyone else. Even when he saw the great sage of chaos and the mountain elder, he did not go up to greet them. Daiyu and the others were puzzled. The evil lord was different from the great sage of chaos and the mountain elder. She was a loner. Even if Su Zimo had broken through, it should not be worth it for her to make a trip down personally. The experts in the sacred hall were all speechless. As expected of the former great emperor Araki Takashi, he just broke through and three great sages are here to support him. Even after ascending to the thousands of worlds, great emperor Araki Takashi is still a top-notch existence. Some of the ascenders lamented. However, Su Zimo had yet to appear. Everyone was puzzled. No matter what, Su Zimo should have appeared personally with three great sages. Why was he so negligent? The 33 skies in the northwest. The commotion in the chaotic sacred land had also alarmed a few terrifying existences here. A wordless tombstone gradually appeared in the void. A black-haired man in battle armor sat on it. He was tall and straight, and his eyes were sharp. The surroundings were lifeless. A sinister wind blew past, and ghostly figures flickered, accompanied by the soul-stirring cries of ghosts. They were sometimes mournful, sometimes resentful, and sometimes low. Among the ghostly figures, only one figure remained unmoving, faintly discernible. Following that, a sinister aura swept over. In the endless sea of blood, there was a mountain of corpses piled up. At the peak of the mountain, there was a white bone throne piled up with white bones. A figure sat on it with an oppressive aura, as if he had come from the depths of hell. His eyes were dark as he looked at the chaotic sacred land. Hee. At that moment, a chuckle came from not far away. In the next moment, a solemn-looking man with a golden scepter in his hand, a crown on his head, and a necklace draped over his body slowly. He was riding on a huge six-tusked white elephant. Wherever the man with the crown passed, the deathly aura would avoid him, and the ghostly figures would retreat. A brilliant path appeared in the sea of blood, and the mountain of corpses. Araki Takashi has become a great sage. It's so lively over there. The evil lord has already gone to congratulate him. Why don't the three of you go? The man with the crown smiled and asked, Didn't the three of you fight side by side with him? The evil lord on the tombstone was expressionless, and he did not say a word. The Lord of Hell on the white bone throne said indifferently, Not interested. After a short pause, the Lord of Hell looked at the Brahma Ghost's mother, and said with a faint smile, I believe that the Brahma Ghost's mother would not want to go either. What do you mean? The man with the jeweled crown understood the hidden meaning behind his words. So he asked with a smile. The Lord of Hell said, Before the Brahma Ghost's mother ascended, she killed Araki Takashi's partner. If she shows up, Araki Takashi will not let her go. He dares. The Brahma Ghost's mother snorted and said, If he wants to take revenge, he can come to the 33 heavens. I want to see what he can do. I'll give you a chance. Suddenly, another voice sounded in their ears. End of chapter. Chapter 3363. The Fiend Master, and the other three looked in the direction of the voice. The void cracked open, and a figure appeared. He had black hair and a green robe. He stood in the air and didn't hide the killing intent in his eyes. The first thing Suzimo did when he came out of seclusion was to find the Brahma Ghost's mother. Even though he was in the territory of the four Tao Masters, Suzimo didn't lose to the Fiend Master and the other three Tao Masters in terms of aura. Interesting. The man with the crown chuckled and said, You really dare to come? Suzimo's gaze swept across the man with the crown. Another great sage. Other than the four Tao Masters, there should only be one great sage in the 33 heavens. And that was the Palace Master of the 33 heavenly palaces. After the Fiend Master and the others ascended, the 5 Saint Lords came to the 33 heavens and joined forces with the Palace Master of the 33 heavenly palaces. They wanted to suppress the 4 Tao Masters. In the end, they returned without success. Now, the Palace Master was with the Fiend Master, the Brahma Ghost's mother, and the Lord of Hell. They didn't seem to be hostile, and they seemed to be quite familiar with each other. After cultivating to this realm, and obtaining the complete inheritance memories of the primal chaos Qinglian, Suzimo knew that there weren't many secrets in the Great Thousand Worlds anymore. He had long guessed the identity of the Palace Master of the 33 heavenly palaces. Seeing the 4 of them together, Suzimo wasn't surprised. The Fiend Master was still expressionless when he saw Suzimo arrive, as if he didn't care about what was going to happen next. He only glanced at Suzimo and turned away, still sitting on the blank tombstone. The Lord of Hell frowned. He couldn't see her real body among the layers of ghostly shadows. However, the killing intent in the ghostly shadows increased sharply. The Brahma Ghost's mother's voice sounded. Back then, the 5 Saint Lords relied on the 5 heavenly Tao Saint artifacts to invade. All of them returned empty-handed. Yet you came here alone. That's just courting death. Suzimo had become a great sage, and the Brahma Ghost's mother was a little afraid to face him alone. She could only pull the Fiend Master and the other 2 Tao Masters. Suzimo's expression was calm. His gaze swept past the Demon Lord and the other 2 as he said indifferently, Back then, the 5 great Saint Lords faced the 4 of you. Today, I only want your life. Although he did not say it explicitly, Suzimo's implied meaning was to tell the Fiend Master trio that today's matter had nothing to do with them. The Brahma Ghost's mother sneered. Do you think the 3 of them will just stand by and watch? It's none of my business. The Devil Master suddenly spoke. The smile on Brahma Ghost's mother's face stiffened. She gritted her teeth and said, I forgot that you are a cold-hearted person. Except for himself. I don't care about anyone's life or death. Brahma Ghost's mother's gaze shifted to the crowned man and the Lord of Hell. Don't look at me. The man with the crown shrugged slightly. He looked around and said meaningfully, It doesn't seem like it's our turn to make a move here. The King of Hell's face was gloomy, and he didn't say anything. Well done. The Brahma Ghost's mother sneered. I'd like to see how he will take my life. Before she finished speaking, The Brahma ghost mother brought countless ghostly shadows with her and charged toward Su Zimo, accompanied by a series of shrill cries and howls. At this moment, the whole world was filled with countless ghostly shadows. The sky darkened and ghostly shadows flickered. These ghostly shadows were ferocious and terrifying. They bared their teeth and howled as they charged toward Su Zimo, wanting to tear him into pieces. Disperse! Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly, and his blood and chi surged. A green Qinglian rose behind him, filled with chaotic chi and swaying in the wind. The ghostly shadows crashed into the chaotic Qinglian's divine light, and they let out a series of shrill screams. They fled in all directions, unable to get close to him at all. A ghostly claw appeared, and its nails tore through the void, making a sharp and ear-piercing sound as it clawed toward Su Zimo's face. Su Zimo's eyes were as bright as lightning. He shouted, stepped forward and raised his fist. The chaotic divine body's blood and chi surged, and this fist burst out with a majestic power, as if it could pierce through heaven and earth and suppress all living things. Boom! The fist and the claw collided, and a loud bang erupted, shaking heaven and earth. The Brahma ghost mother let out a muffled groan and retreated dozens of feet. Her real body was knocked out of the ghostly shadows by Su Zimo's fist. Boom! 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 Su Zimo chased after the Brahma ghost mother, and he didn't give her a chance to catch her breath. His fists were like hammers, and his elbows were like spears. The Brahma ghost mother was forced to retreat, and she couldn't resist at all. In the battle of the great sages, there were no powerful spells or divine powers, nor were there any mysterious and complicated moves. It was a battle of simplicity and simplicity. A casual punch or kick from the great sages could burst out with the power of the great path of destruction. If even the great path of destruction couldn't withstand it, what other spells or divine powers could? Suddenly, the Brahma ghost mother took out a dark dagger and wanted to kill Su Quebec. This was her divine artifact, the blade of the Brahma ghost mother. Once hit by this dagger, one's soul would be drawn out. Clang! Su Zimo's eyes were like torches, and he could see through all of the Brahma ghost mother's thoughts. He bent his finger and flicked the blade of the Brahma ghost mother away. Then he quickly changed his move. He put two of his fingers together like a sword and stabbed the Brahma ghost mother in between her eyebrows. If the Brahma ghost mother hadn't dodged in time, her head would have been pierced through. The Lord of Hell had been sitting on the white bone throne. Now that he saw the Brahma ghost mother in danger, he couldn't sit still anymore and attacked. Swoosh! The sea of blood surged and terrifying waves were set off. Countless white bones gathered around the Lord of Hell, and they piled up to form a white bone giant. It was emitting a gloomy aura, and it held a white bone giant sword in its hand. It slashed at Su Zimo. Su Zimo's expression didn't change, but his mind moved. Buzz! The sound of swords rang through the sky. Two sword lights appeared, and they slashed at the Brahma ghost mother and the Lord of Hell. The Avicii sword and Netherworld sword descended. Even when facing two great sages, Su Zimo was still strong and fearless. Clang! The sharpest Avicii sword slashed at the white bone giant sword. Although it didn't break the white bone giant sword, it still made a dent on the white bone giant sword. The Lord of Hell's body trembled. The Brahma ghost mother was even weaker. She was already injured by Su Zimo's attack, and she couldn't resist the attack of the Netherworld sword. In just a breath, a sword mark appeared on her body. The injury wasn't serious. However, the terrifying thing about the Netherworld sword was that even if it was a flesh wound, it could directly kill the primordial spirit with its terrifying killing intent. The Brahma ghost mother's body trembled slightly, and her eyes were dazed for a moment, but she quickly recovered. She didn't die. Su Zimo's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. The Brahma ghost mother's face was pale. She gritted her teeth and said, "I am the hungry ghost Tao Master, the ancestor of the ghost race, and I control the ghosts of the 3,000 worlds. Do you think you can kill me with one sword?" Su Zimo smiled faintly and said, "If I can't kill you with one sword, I'll just slash you a few more times." The Brahma ghost mother's heart trembled, and she suddenly screamed at the void, "Why aren't you showing yourself? Do you want to watch him kill me before you attack?" End of chapter. Chapter 3364. As soon as he said that, a figure appeared on the scene. He was dressed in a black robe and stood with his hands behind his back. His long hair casually fell on his shoulders. He looked extremely young and handsome, but he gave off a sense of loneliness. The black-robed man. Perhaps he could also be called Saint King Samsara. Wu Dao's original body had learned many ancient secrets from the black-robed man, including the 6 Taisha primordial spirits and Saint King life. But in fact, there were more than 7 Saint Kings in the Greater Thousand World. There were 8 sacred grounds in the Greater Thousand World. In other words, other than Saint King life, there was another Saint King who had cultivated and become a Saint King. He had created the Saint King Samsara and was on par with the 6 Taisha primordial spirits. The black-robed man had never mentioned this person. Wu Dao's original body did not ask either. The two of them had a tacit understanding. Only Saint King Samsara could lead the 6 paths and protect the remnant soul of Saint King Samsara. He even knew about the existence of the 6 Taisha primordial spirits. Are you going to do something? Su Zimo asked calmly. If Saint King Samsara did something, Su Zimo would not be able to kill Brahma Ghost's mother today. He would have to retreat temporarily. Although he had become a supreme saint, he was not confident that he could fight against Saint King Samsara. When Nirvana Ghost's mother saw Saint King Samsara, a trace of respect flashed in her eyes. However, the evil aura around her suddenly dissipated. Her eyes became gentle as she whispered, "Master, this person has gone too far. He actually came to the 33 heavens to take my life. Master, please help me." Saint King Samsara said lightly, "This is between the two of you. Settle it yourselves. Hell should not interfere." Yes. The Lord of Hell heard this and bowed his head respectfully. He did not dare to hesitate in the slightest. "Master." Brahma Ghost's mother was furious and said, "This person bullied me with the 2 swords that Master made. Are you not going to do anything? This is unfair to you." Saint King Samsara nodded. He waved his hand gently. Su Zimo's body shook, and he felt his palm go numb. The Avicii and Netherworld swords that were originally in his hands broke free from his grasp and flew towards Saint King Samsara. In the blink of an eye, the Avicii and Netherworld swords had already landed in Saint King Samsara's hands. Su Zimo's expression remained the same. Although the Avicii and Netherworld swords were based on the Qinglian sword and the Red Lotus sword, they were forged by the Saint King of Samsara. Su Zimo was not surprised that he could control these 2 swords. "These 2 swords have helped you a lot. It's time to take them back." Saint King Samsara looked at the Avicii and Netherworld swords in his hands. Suddenly, he loosened his grip, and the 2 swords fell to the ground. Once again, he grabbed onto the 2 swords and tightened his grip. Crack! A crisp sound rang out. Everyone present was shocked. The 2 swords, Avicii and Netherworld, were known as the best swords in terms of sharpness and killing, but they were crushed by Saint King Samsara with his bare hands. The 2 swords shattered, leaving behind a wisp of green light and red light. It was the power of the Qinglian sword and the Red Lotus sword. They returned to Su Zimo's body, and Saint King Samsara did not stop them. Su Zimo's expression did not change, as he was secretly shocked. Saint King Samsara might be even more powerful than he had imagined. As Wu Dao's original body had deduced the Yuanwu world and traced back to the origin of the universe, he had already deduced that the grand beginning primordial spirit, or Saint King level experts, were not only in terms of strength, but also in terms of realm. They were beings of a higher level. They were the absolute masters of the 3,000 worlds, the rulers. When Su Zimo's realm reached the perfected Tao controlling realm, his essence soul was already comparable to a supreme saint. After stepping into the saint realm, his essence soul surpassed that of a supreme saint. And when his cultivation realm reached the supreme saint realm, the power of his essence soul also skyrocketed. But he still had not reached the level of a saint king. From this, one could see the huge gap between a supreme saint and a saint king. When the Brahma Ghost's mother saw this scene, she was overjoyed and smiled. "Thank you, Master." Without the Avicii and Netherworld swords, with Su Zimo's strength, even if he could defeat her, it would be impossible for him to kill her in the 33 heavens. The Brahma Ghost's mother stared at Su Zimo and let out a long howl. Countless ghosts appeared around her as she charged over again. Su Zimo stepped forward, his blood chi surging. Even without the Avicii and Netherworld swords, his combat strength was enough to crush the Brahma Ghost Mother. After obtaining Qinglian's inheritance memories and relying on the chaotic sacred body, he could suppress any Saint Lord after becoming a supreme saint. Boom! 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 The two sides fought in midair, erupting with earth-shattering sounds. The Chaos Great Tao and the Hungry Ghost Tao intertwined and collided, devouring and tearing at each other. Normally speaking, the Hungry Ghost Tao would definitely not be able to withstand the power of the Chaos Great Tao. However, the Hungry Ghost Tao was attached to the Reincarnation Great Tao, causing the Hungry Ghost Tao's power to be endless. In addition, there were endless ghosts emerging from the Hungry Ghost Tao. Through sacrifices and various other methods, they maintained the Brahma Ghost Mother's battle. However, Su Zimo's chaotic sacred body was at greater mastery, and his essence divinity realm far surpassed that of a supreme saint. Under the descent of his sacred aura, the countless ghosts could not get close at all. Blood chi surged, and the thousands of ghosts were reduced to ashes. Not long after, the Brahma Ghost Mother showed signs of defeat and was at a disadvantage. Su Zimo seized the opportunity and locked onto the Brahma Ghost Mother's true body. His sword fingers slashed down and directly cut off her head, causing blood to spurt out. Chaotic energy surged and instantly minced the Brahma Ghost Mother's essence divinity. However, the next moment, the Brahma Ghost Mother's figure appeared again. Although she looked a little weak, her cultivation realm and combat strength were still there. Su Zimo's expression did not change as he used his killing methods again. He killed the Brahma Ghost Mother one after another, but the latter could always revive from the dead. It was impossible to kill her completely. He. The Brahma Ghost Mother chuckled and said proudly, "In the 33 heavens, your strength can't kill me at all. Don't waste your energy." In fact, after stepping into the 33 heavens, Su Zimo could vaguely sense that his strength was suppressed here. There seemed to be a barrier in the 33 heavens, and there was some kind of law inside. As long as one stepped into this place, they would be affected by this law. Back then, the 5 sacred lords each wielded a heavenly Tao sacred artifact and killed their way into the 33 heavens. In the end, they returned empty-handed. This was probably the reason. Su Zimo did not say a word and continued to attack. With a thought. Chaos Sacred Ground, Great Sage of Chaos, the Mountain Elder, the Evil Lord, Daiyu, and a group of experts were gathered in the Chaos Hall, discussing Su Zimo's whereabouts. Suddenly, the Chaos Sacred Ground shook. Everyone's expression changed. There were 3 great sages present. Who would dare to offend them? Even if the 5 sacred lords joined forces, the Chaos Sacred Ground still had the strength to fight. Something's not right. The Mountain Elder frowned slightly and said, "It's not outside." The 3 great sages seemed to have sensed something and looked at the huge mountain guarded by the 4 lotus peaks at the same time. They saw that the mountain was shaking continuously. The mountain was covered in cracks, and countless rocks and dust rolled down. This towering mountain that reached into the clouds was uprooting from the ground. Dong! Immediately after, the sound of an ancient bell rang out from the mountain. The 3 great sages shuddered and seemed to have thought of something. They exclaimed, "Heavenly Tao Sacred Artifact Chaos Bell." End of chapter. Chapter 3370. At that thought, Su Zimo pondered deeply. He had not reached the level of primal chaos Qinglian back then, and there were some memories that he could not see clearly. However, he could faintly feel that there might be more to the battle between the Sage Kings back then. Feng Cantillon asked, "According to what you said, the 5 Taisher primordial spirits might have already awakened, and Sage King Samsara is making a comeback. There will definitely be a battle between them. I just don't know when this battle will erupt. The 5 Taisher primordial spirits should find me first," Su Zimo said slowly. "They won't wait for me to become a Sage King before appearing. The 5 Sage Lords should be here as a final warning." Everyone's heart sank. This meant that there was not much time left for Su Zimo. The 5 grand beginning primordial spirits could come at any moment and kill Su Zimo first. If the 5 Taisha primordial spirits find you, will Sage King Samsara help? Daiyu was worried that Sage King Samsara would hold a grudge against Su Zimo because of the Brahma ghost mother's death, and would choose to stand by and watch. Su Zimo was silent for a moment before saying, "I don't know." In fact, he was not clear about the Brahma ghost mother's position in Sage King Samsara's heart. Logically speaking, the Brahma ghost mother was not only Sage King Samsara's disciple, but she also controlled one of the 6 paths. She was extremely important. However, Sage King Samsara had watched him kill the Brahma ghost mother in the previous battle. If Sage King Samsara did not care about the Brahma ghost mother at all, then he had saved her soul in the end. Moreover, the Brahma ghost mother did not seem to only be Sage King Samsara's disciple. Su Zimo said, "Even if he doesn't help, it's fine. Even if this Qinglian primordial spirit dies, there's still a chance of survival." "Is your Wu Dao primordial spirit still around?" Feng Cantillon could not help but ask. Su Zimo nodded. Everyone perked up. These old friends all knew about the existence of Su Zimo's Wu Dao's true body. However, ever since the War of the Heavens, Wu Dao's original body had been destroyed by the heavenly tribulation, and he had never appeared again. Everyone thought that Wu Dao's original body had already perished. What realm has Wu Dao cultivated to? Can he stand shoulder to shoulder with Taisha Yuanling? Lin Xuanji's eyes lit up as he asked hurriedly. What realm? Su Zimo shook his head. I don't know. The cultivation of Wu Dao's original body was different from that of his predecessors, and there was no reference. It was completely different from the cultivation methods of the 3,000 worlds. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo said, "Stronger than the great sage, but not at the level of the Taisha primordial spirit." After all, several chaos holy spirits had been born within the chaos verse of Wu Dao's true body. The battle prowess of Wu Dao's true body surpassed that of a supreme saint, but it was still incomparable to Taisha's primordial spirit. Taisha primordial spirit was born in an even more ancient universe. Everyone fell silent again. If they could not stand shoulder to shoulder with the Taisha primordial spirit, they would not be able to resolve this calamity. It could only be considered a slim chance of survival. Su Zimo did not explain. In fact, he was still looking forward to the arrival of the 5 Taisha primordial spirits. That was because if the chaos verse of Wu Dao's true body wanted to continue evolving and trace back to the origin of the universe, the only opportunity was with the 5 Taisha primordial spirits. Although Chaos Qinglian was also one of the 6 great Taisha primordial spirits back then, Chaos Qinglian had already fallen. Her soul had reincarnated several times, and her body was destroyed and reconstructed. Even if Su Zimo cultivated Qinglian's true body to the great sage realm, there would be no aura or traces of the era of the universe where the Taisha primordial spirits were born. As for Sacred King reincarnation, he had attained the Tao through postnatal cultivation and became a Sacred King. He did not belong to that era of the universe. Only the 5 Taisha primordial spirits could see traces of that ancient universe, search for clues, and trace back to the origin. That was the opportunity that Wu Dao's true body was waiting for. 10 days later, the sky above the greater 1,000 world changed drastically. Other than the 33 heavens that were unaffected, the other territories were shrouded in a suffocating and terrifying pressure, as if the end of the world had arrived. All races were shocked and kept quiet out of fear. Even if one's cultivation had reached the supremacy level, at that moment, they felt a fear that touched their souls. All the sages were in an uproar, and felt their scalps go numb. They did not dare to act rashly. Even the sages did not know what had happened. In the 3,000 worlds, only existences at the great sage level knew what this terrifying pressure meant. Even they could not resist this kind of power. The 5 most ancient beings had appeared. In the chaos sacred land, Su Zimo slowly opened his eyes. His expression was calm as he looked up at the sky and said indifferently, "They're here." In the main hall, everyone had yet to leave. They came so quickly. Even if they were mentally prepared, everyone's faces were still pale, and they were shocked. Even Daiyu, who had always been calm, subconsciously held Su Zimo's hand tightly, as if afraid that he would not return. Chaos, come for a chat. A voice entered Su Zimo's ears. Su Zimo got up and gently squeezed Dayu's palm. He smiled slightly, indicating for her to rest assured. Then, Su Zimo turned around and looked at all his old friends in the main hall. He paused for a moment on everyone's face, as if he wanted to remember their appearance. Everyone also realized that this farewell might be the last time they saw each other. A moment later, Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and left, disappearing from sight. Above the vast thousand worlds, clouds and mist rolled, covering the sky and the sun. Su Zimo passed through the layers of clouds and arrived above the vast thousand worlds. Not far away, there stood 5 figures that were suffused with a faint halo. 2 balls of purple flames suddenly rose in Su Zimo's eyes. Wu Dao's true body used the eyes of Qinglian's true body to begin searching for traces and aura of that ancient universe on the 5 Taisha primordial spirits. When Su Zimo stared at the 5 Taisha primordial spirits, the 5 Taisha primordial spirits were also sizing him up. The Taisha primordial spirit in the middle that was suffused with a destructive aura said indifferently, "I thought you were the reincarnation of chaos. Now it seems that other than the physical body of Chaos Qinglian, you have nothing to do with chaos." However, this universe could vaguely be distinguished as a rough prototype. This was the only thing that Su Zimo could sense. This was an even more ancient and primitive universe. It had form but no substance. Gradually, in this empty universe, 4 balls of light were first born. They floated and approached the center of the universe. This is. When Su Zimo saw these 4 balls of light, a sense of déjà vu arose in his heart. He seemed to have seen them somewhere before. The battle between Saint King Samsara and the 5 Taisha primordial spirits continued. The aftermath of the power that erupted from both sides spread in all directions and struck Su Zimo, causing the bell of chaos to tremble and ring. Hearing this bell, Su Zimo suddenly came to a realization. On the bell of chaos, mountains, rivers, earth, sun, moon, and stars were engraved. It was majestic. Apart from that, there were 4 strange traces of power on the bell. It was not a great Tao, but it was indestructible. And the aura of these 4 traces of power was almost the same as the 4 balls of light in the universe that Wu Dao's true body had transformed into. After an unknown period of time, the 4 balls of light gathered at the center of the universe. This time, Su Zimo felt it even more clearly. These 4 balls of light were not alive, nor did they have any aura of life. They were just 4 pure ancient powers. One of them was similar to the Great Tao of Earth, but it was more inclusive. The other was similar to the Great Tao of Fire, but it was more ancient and primitive. One was similar to the Great Tao of Water, and the other was similar to the Great Tao of Wind. The 2 balls of light seemed to have inadvertently collided and merged with each other. A miraculous scene happened. The collision and fusion of the 2 forces burst forth with the aura of life. The first life in this universe was born. This life was still a little tender. It was an inch-long seedling that looked extremely weak. It was rooted in the universe and swayed gently. This was Chaos Qinglian. Under the guidance of Wu Dao's true body, the 4 balls of power collided and 5 more lives were born. On these 5 lives, the power of yin and yang, heavenly punishment, nirvana, space-time, and fire appeared. When all 6 lives were born, the 4 balls of power were completely exhausted. I see. Seeing this scene, Su Zimo was enlightened. That was the origin of the 6 Taisha primordial spirits. Su Zimo called these 4 balls of power of Taisha earth, water, wind, and fire. Due to the fusion of earth, water, wind, and fire, the 6 Taisha primordial spirits were born. They were also the first 6 lives in this universe. The 6 heavenly Daos of this universe descended. Su Zimo called this formless universe that gave birth to the 6 Taisha primordial spirits. In the greater thousand world, after the 5 Taisha primordial spirits attacked, Wu Dao's true body discovered the aura and traces of the 4 types of power of Taisha on them. Chapter 3376. You, what are you doing? The mountain elder looked at the fallen sages below, his arms trembling slightly as he stared at sacred King Samsara, and asked in a deep voice, "Of course I'm killing the sages." Sacred King Samsara's gaze swept past the mountain elder, evil lord, and the others as he said with a faint smile, "Then it's you guys." There seemed to be a hint of a smile and a hint of mockery in his eyes, but everyone who looked at him felt a bone-chilling coldness. And then, the mountain elder's expression was calm as he continued to ask. Sacred King Samsara said casually, "Then, I'll kill all living beings in this world and accompany you on your journey. I'll let you die a glorious death. How about that?" Everyone was shocked. "Are you crazy?" The Supreme Sage of Chaos could not help but ask. Su Zimo frowned slightly and said, "I remember you saying that you want to build a world where all living beings are equal." "Oh." Sacred King Samsara smiled and said, "I forgot to tell you. That was my original idea," Su Zimo said. "If you're killing the sages to resolve the immeasurable calamity of all living beings, then why are you killing all living beings? Do I need a reason?" Sacred King Samsara said indifferently, "In the Trichiliocosm, only I am supreme. With the 3 books heaven, earth, and man, the life and death of all living beings are in my control. I can kill if I want to. Who can do anything to me?" Evil Lord looked at Sacred King Samsara coldly and said, "Back then, I was willing to follow you. I believed in Master's judgment. Unfortunately, she was wrong about you." The Dragon Slayer became an evil dragon. Evil Lord suddenly looked at Su Zimo and said, "Do you still remember what I didn't finish in the Chaos Hall?" Su Zimo nodded. At that time, the Evil Lord had suddenly said something. If an existence that no one can fight against is born in the Trichiliocosm, Evil Lord had only said half of it. At this moment Evil Lord continued, "If this existence is evil, what should we do?" "Then we'll kill it again," Su Zimo said. Evil Lord also nodded and said in a cold tone, "If the Dragon Slayer becomes an evil dragon, then we'll kill it again." "Ha ha ha ha." Saint King Samsara laughed out loud. "Evil Lord, are you counting on him to help you?" Saint King Samsara said, "Although he has cultivated to the level of Heavenly Path Saint King, he is no threat to me. His birth was after the Mortal Book was completed. His fate was recorded in the Mortal Book. I can suppress it with a single thought." As expected, when Su Zimo heard this, his expression was calm. He had just thought of this possibility. Among the Trichiliocosm, only the Great Sage of Chaos, the Mountain Elder, the Evil Lord, and a few others who were born before the human book were not suppressed by it. However, the Mountain Elder, Evil Lord, and the others had yet to become Heavenly Tao Saint Kings. They were no match for Saint King Samsara. Furthermore, the 3 books of heaven, earth, and man had already devoured 5 Taisher primordial spirits. Saint King Samsara's combat power had probably surpassed the Heavenly Path Saint King. No one knew what level he had reached. "After enduring for so long, are you still not going to draw your sword?" At this moment, Saint King Samsara suddenly said something out of the blue. Then he slowly turned his head and looked at a person not far away. That person was sitting on the nameless tombstone. He was wearing black armor and was covered in wounds. His face was expressionless. It was the Evil Lord. Everyone was secretly puzzled. What was the Evil Lord enduring? Who was he going to draw his sword against? Saint King Samsara continued, "You are in charge of the Ashura, but you cultivate the path of killing. In the Shura field behind you, there are 4 tombs. 4 killing swords are buried in each of them. Heaven slaying, earth destroying, king killing, and kin killing. You are naturally cold. Only by slaying heaven destroying, earth destroying, king killing, and kin killing were you able to nurture the 4 killing swords. And if you want to improve your path of killing, you have to refine the 5th tomb and nurture the 5th killing sword, Master Killing." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Heaven, earth, king, kin, and master. The Evil Lord's path of killing was actually cultivated like this. And the Evil Lord's master was the Saint King Samsara in front of him. "You are right," the Evil Lord said slowly. The Evil Lord said slowly, "If I want to improve further and become a Heavenly Tao Saint King, I have to sacrifice your life to my sword. Even if you kill me, you won't become a Heavenly Tao Saint King." Saint King Samsara shook his head and said, Because your path of killing still has a sixth tomb. This sixth tomb is the tomb that you will bury yourself in. As soon as he finished speaking, the evil lord's body clearly shook a little. It was obvious that his mind was in turmoil. One had to know that even in the battle between the great sages just now, nothing could shake the evil lord's heart. He was expressionless and unperturbed from start to finish. However, at this moment, Saint King Samsara's words clearly touched the evil lord's weakness. Saint King Samsara said, "Heaven-slaying, earth-destroying, king-killing, and master-killing. The tombstone that you are sitting on is prepared for you. With my own blood, with my own soul, I will nurture the final sword of slaughter self." Su Zimo, the mountain elder, and the others were enlightened. Even the mountain elder and the others did not know that the tombstone that the evil lord was sitting on was actually for himself. No wonder it was blank. As expected of the path of killing, heaven-slaying, earth-destroying, king-killing, master-killing and self-killing. Each step was more ruthless than the last. At the end of cultivation, one had to give oneself a sword to achieve the heavenly Tao. Whether it was the evil lord or the evil lord, they were both people with firm Tao hearts, and were difficult to shake. Although the evil lord followed Saint King Samsara, she hated evil. Therefore, when she saw that Saint King Samsara was about to do evil, she abandoned all restraints and chose to fight against Saint King Samsara. The evil lord was the same. Saint King Samsara was his master, but for the path of killing, he even wanted to attack Saint King Samsara. After being exposed by Saint King Samsara, the evil lord's emotions were still a little stirred at first. However, he had already calmed down and said lightly, "This can't be hidden from you." What a pity. Saint King Samsara was a little disappointed. "I still overestimated you. I waited for so long, but you didn't dare to attack me. You can't even kill your master. How are you going to kill yourself?" The evil lord's expression changed slightly. His emotions that had calmed down were stirred again. Saint King Samsara's words were like a sharp knife that went straight to his heart. Saint King Samsara continued, "Killing yourself requires a lot of courage and boldness. Do you think that after replacing me and becoming the Lord of all spirits, and the ruler of the three realms, you still have the courage to kill yourself? Can you really stab this sword down?" The evil lord's face turned even paler. Saint King Samsara said, "I've lived for countless years and witnessed a lot of history. I've also seen too many people and too many things. Many people have good intentions, but as time passes and their cultivation levels increase, how many people can maintain their original intentions? People's hearts change. This is an eternal truth. I'm like that. If it's you, all of you will be the same." As he said that, Saint King Samsara looked around. His gaze swept past everyone, and when it landed on Su Zimo, it paused slightly. Su Zimo's heart suffered a huge blow when he heard that. Not only the evil lord, but even he was deep in thought. As long as one was human, they had their own selfish desires. Who wouldn't change? If one really reached that position, and became the ruler of the three realms, and the only one in the world, who could guarantee that they would remain the same throughout the long years, and not get lost? Even if they could guarantee that they would not change, how could they guarantee that their family, brothers, and descendants would remain the same? Chapter 3377. The evil lord also fell silent. The dragon slayer eventually became the evil dragon. Even if they killed the evil dragon, who could guarantee that they would not become a new evil dragon? Wasn't this another kind of reincarnation? How could they avoid this kind of reincarnation? Could it be that the trichiliocosm really couldn't escape this fate? At this moment the mountain elder sighed softly. With a sad expression he suddenly asked, "Is it for master?" The only person who could make the mountain elder call him master was Life Saint. Saint King Samsara raised his head slightly with a bleak expression. He looked at the faint crack in the sky and didn't say a word. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Just now, Saint King Samsara was arrogant and had a strong aura. Just based on those few words alone, it had a huge impact on everyone. When the mountain elder mentioned Life Saint, Saint King Samsara seemed to have changed into another person. Looking at the current Saint King Samsara, Su Zimo seemed to see the lonely figure sitting alone by the sea in the holy ground. Could it be that between Saint King Samsara and Life Saint? The mountain elder sighed again and said, even if you want to take revenge for Master, you don't have to vent your anger on all living beings. They have nothing to do with this matter. They are innocent. Saint King Samsara still stood with his hands behind his back and remained silent. Master, is what he said true? At this moment, another woman slowly walked over. This woman looked extremely young. She was a little immature, but compared to the Brahma Ghost's mother, they were 80 to 90% similar. Brahma Ghost's mother? Everyone recognized this woman immediately. But soon, everyone realized that this woman should be the reincarnation of the Brahma Ghost's mother. Her cultivation realm was extremely low, but her memories from back then were still there. The Brahma Ghost's mother stared at Saint King Samsara, clenching her fists tightly. Her eyes were complicated and filled with grief and resentment. She slowly asked, you can kill all living beings in the world for that woman, but you're not even willing to help me when I'm killed. Saint King Samsara didn't even look at the Brahma Ghost's mother. He only replied coldly, are you worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as her? This sentence was extremely cruel and heartless. Hearing this, the Brahma Ghost's mother's body swayed slightly. Hee hee. Nirvana Ghost's mother laughed, but her face was already full of tears. She murmured, so after so many years of following and accompanying you, I'm actually so lowly in your heart. I can't even compare to her. Brahma Ghost's mother giggled and said softly, if that's the case, why did you save my soul? Wouldn't it be great if I could die with the memories of my past life? Saint King Samsara finally turned around and looked at the Brahma Ghost's mother expressionlessly. Do you want to die? I can fulfill your wish. The Heavenly Path Tao Master, the King of Hell, and the others were secretly shocked and looked at each other in shock. Not to mention them, even the people on Su Zimos and the great sage of Chaos's side found it hard to believe when they heard those cold words. No matter what, the Brahma Ghost's mother was still Saint King Samsara's disciple. However, Sacred King Samsara did not seem to have any feelings for this disciple. The ghost's mother smiled and bowed to Saint King Samsara. Thank you, Master. We're all going to die. Since that's the case, I'll send you on your way first. Saint King Samsara waved his sleeves. Poof! The Brahma Ghost's mother instantly turned into dust in front of everyone. Her body and soul were destroyed. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. Facing his own disciple, Saint King Samsara had killed him without hesitation. The Heavenly Path Tao Master and the King of Hell looked at Saint King Samsara with fear and a trace of unfamiliarity. The Lord of Hell suddenly took a step forward and knelt down in front of Saint King Samsara. With a respectful expression, he said in a deep voice, Master's action is no different from creating a new world. It should be admired by all ages. Only Master can uphold justice for the 3,000 worlds. I'm willing to be the first to follow Master and protect hell for Master. You kneeled so quickly. Saint King Samsara smiled. There seemed to be a hidden meaning behind those words. The King of Hell obviously heard it, but he remained calm and did not even blush. He said in a deep voice, It's only right for me to kneel and worship Master. It's also out of respect for Master. Flattery is indeed nice. Saint King Samsara nodded slightly and changed the topic. Unfortunately, you still have to die after kneeling. The King of Hell's expression changed slightly. The Heavenly Path Tao Master also knelt suddenly and said in a deep voice, Master wants us to die to uphold justice. I have no complaints. Hell, as long as our souls are still here, Master can reincarnate us at any time. Master's actions are for the greater good. You have to understand Master's difficulties. The King of Hell quickly said, Heavenly Path Tao Master is right. Greater good. Difficulties. Saint King Samsara laughed loudly, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He glanced at the two with a mocking expression and said, Death is death. You have no chance of reincarnation. The Heavenly Path Tao Master and the King of Hell panicked. They knew that Saint King Samsara was a man of his words. He would not joke with them. Master, why is this? The Lord of Hell's voice was trembling. Saint King Samsara said lightly, The two of you are far inferior to Wuxia. You can't even compare to the Demon Lord. Before he finished speaking, Saint King Samsara suddenly appeared in front of the King of Hell and the Heavenly Path Tao Master. His palm had already landed on their heads. Other than Su Zimo, no one saw Saint King Samsara's actions clearly. When the crowd reacted, they saw Saint King Samsara's palm gently pressing on the two's heads. Thump! The King of Hell and the Heavenly Path Tao Master were in a daze. Their vitality was quickly draining away. They fell to the ground and were no longer breathing. Their souls had dissipated. Two great sages were killed by Saint King Samsara so easily. Moreover, these two were Saint King Samsara's disciples. They were the original guardians of the Heavenly Path and Hell Path. Crazy. Saint King Samsara had gone crazy. This was the only thought left in the minds of the great sage of chaos and the others. They could not understand Saint King Samsara's actions at all. Could it be that Saint King Samsara would only stop after he killed everyone in the world? Only the Demon Lord and the Mountain Elder knew that no one could change Saint King Samsara's mind and decision. The only person who could do this had died more than 6 billion years ago. Next, it's you guys. Saint King Samsara looked at Su Zimo, the Demon Lord, the Mountain Elder, the Great Sage of Chaos, and the others. He smiled faintly with murderous intent in his eyes. At this moment, even if they knew that they were no match for him, they could not wait to die. Roar! The Great Sage of Chaos roared. His bloodline surged and his aura skyrocketed. The Demon Lord and the Mountain Elder attacked as well. Too weak. Saint King Samsara shook his head. With a gentle lift of his hand, the Great Sage of Chaos and the others felt a shocking pressure descending from the sky. The power was so strong that it almost crushed them into dust. Dong! The bell of chaos rang. Su Zimo took out the Heavenly Tao sacred weapon and joined the battle. Ha! Saint King Samsara was calm. With a thought, the Book of Human descended. Su Zimo felt as though his essence spirit was being pinched by an invisible hand. His expression changed drastically. With a grunt, the bell of chaos also shook. Chapter 3378. Saint King Samsara was right. Su Zimo's soul was in the human book. Saint King Samsara could suppress him with just a thought. He could not fight against Saint King Samsara at all. The Demon Lord, Mountain Elder, and Saint of Chaos were powerless to resist under Saint King Samsara's pressure. The difference between the two sides was too great. The various saints below were powerless to do anything as they watched this scene unfold. Saint King Samsara looked at everyone and said indifferently, I control the 3 books of heaven, earth, and man. I control the 3,000 worlds. No one in this world can compete with me. Even if all of you join forces, it's useless. You're right. Su Zimo tried his best to resist the huge pressure from his soul. He gritted his teeth and said, but there is one person who has jumped out of the 3 realms and is not in the 5 elements. He does not enter the cycle of reincarnation. He is not in your human book. As soon as he finished speaking, a loud sound came from below the greater 1,000 worlds. Rumble! The sky collapsed and the earth cracked. A ball of purple fire broke through the barrier of the greater 1,000 worlds. It resisted Saint King Samsara's pressure and went against the flow. In the blink of an eye, it arrived above the greater 1,000 worlds. The fire dissipated, and a figure appeared. The person had black hair and a purple robe. 2 balls of purple flames burned in his eyes. His body emitted a vast and mysterious aura. There was no light, no darkness, no beginning, and no end. It surpassed time and space and stood above the 3 realms. Wu Dao's true body had descended. Wu Dao's true body's grand beginning universe had already stabilized. In the grand beginning universe, under the guidance of his will, 6 grand beginning primordial spirits had even evolved. Of course, these 6 grand beginning primordial spirits had just been born. They were of limited help to him. But this meant that the power of Wu Dao's true body was already above the 6 grand beginning primordial spirits. Even if Saint King Samsara controlled the 3 books of heaven, earth, and man, he still had the power to fight. Saint King Samsara used the 3 books to control the 3,000 worlds. And Wu Dao's true body was the grand beginning universe. The grand beginning universe had just been born, so its power could not compare to the 3,000 worlds that had evolved over countless years. However, cracks had appeared in Saint King Samsara's 3,000 worlds. No one knew what the outcome of the battle between the grand beginning universe and the 3,000 worlds would be. This was an unprecedented battle. Seeing Wu Dao's real body appear, Sacred King Samsara's expression was calm, and he was not surprised. It seems that you've walked your own path. Saint King Samsara smiled and said, she didn't misjudge you. Su Zimo was stunned. Before he could ask, Saint King Samsara continued, unfortunately, even your Wu Dao true body can't stop me from doing what I want to do. Sacred King Samsara's eyes lit up as he unleashed a powerful divine will that surged into the 3 books. Wang. The heavenly book continued to spread, almost covering the great wide world. The human book seemed to be unable to withstand this kind of power. Countless pages scattered in the air, each page blooming with a dim light. The earth book kept shaking. The netherworld shook violently. Many palaces were collapsing. The power of the 3 books exploding at the same time was enough to destroy the heavens and earth. The martial Dao body's heart trembled and he shouted, Samsara, what are you trying to do? Sacred King Samsara's current posture did not seem like he wanted to fight him at all. Instead, he wanted to destroy the 3,000 worlds. Su Zimo suddenly realized something. If everything Sacred King Samsara did was for Sacred King life, then he had a good reason to destroy the 3,000 worlds. That was because Sacred King life had died after fighting against the 3,000 worlds. If it was a Taisha primordial spirit or a heavenly Dao Sacred King, they would not be able to destroy the 3,000 worlds. Back then, when Chaos Qinglian and Sacred King life worked together, they could only create a few cracks in the 3,000 worlds. However, the current Sacred King Samsara did have this ability. The 3 books of heaven, earth, and man almost covered the entire 3,000 worlds, including all living beings. The heavenly Dao, the great Dao, and the life and death of all living beings were all included. Detonating the 3 books of heaven, earth, and man could destroy the 3,000 worlds that had already cracked. Wu Dao's real body had a solemn expression. This was an irreversible process. If he were to fight with Sacred King Samsara, it was still unknown who would win. However, if Sacred King Samsara wanted to destroy the 3,000 worlds, he would not be able to stop him with his current strength. Moreover, the destruction of the 3,000 worlds also meant that all living beings in the 3,000 worlds would die, including the saints and the great sages. No one would be spared. Even Sacred King Samsara himself could not withstand such a terrifying power. Similarly, Wu Dao's real body could not either. Sacred King Samsara had long been determined to die. Not only did he want to drag everyone down with him, but he also wanted to bury the entire 3,000 worlds. This was Sacred King Samsara's final madness. The evil lord, the mountain elder, and the others also realized this matter and felt a deep sense of powerlessness in their hearts. When a powerhouse was born in the world that no power could keep in check, once this powerhouse fell into madness, everyone would be faced with a calamity. The only thing all living beings in this world could do was wait for the end of the world. Between heaven and earth, some lovers held each other's hands tightly. Some parents hugged their children tightly in their arms and comforted them softly. Some people looked desperate and cried bitterly. Some people closed their eyes and waited for the final moment to arrive. Under the catastrophe, all living beings had different expressions. This moment seemed to be extremely long. Su Zimo and Dai Yu had a tacit understanding and looked at each other at the same time. The 2 of them looked at each other and smiled. In this life, they had also been vigorous and finally walked together. That was enough. The 3 books of heaven, earth, and man completely exploded, erupting with a terrifying power that swept through the 3,000 worlds and destroyed everything. The saints and great sages could not withstand it at all, and quickly turned into a cloud of blood mist. The living beings of the 10,000 races were even more miserable, and were instantly turned into ashes. Countless lives were withering. Mountains and rivers were being destroyed. As a heavenly Dao Sacred King, Su Zimo could only hold on for a moment before he was devoured by this terrifying power and died. After an unknown period of time, only 2 figures were left in the void. Wu Dao's real body and Sacred King Samsara. Sacred King Samsara took a deep look at Wu Dao's real body. He still had that strange look in his eyes. Wu Dao's real body did not have the mood and time to understand. The 3,000 worlds were also collapsing and shattering. This destructive power set off layers of storms in the ruins of the 3,000 worlds and tore sacred King Samsara apart. Wu Dao's real body was in the center of this storm and could not avoid it. But he still did not give up. He still had one last choice. Take the initiative to detonate the grand beginning universe and use this power to resist the destructive storm of the 3,000 worlds. In the explosion of the two universes, continue to evolve on the ruins of the two worlds and trace back to the origin of the universe. If he could evolve an even more primitive and ancient universe, he might be able to obtain a new life in the destructive storm of the 3,000 worlds. If he could not deduce it, his consciousness would return to silence, and he would die. Before this, Wu Dao's real body was able to successfully evolve 3 times because of the powerful living beings that originally existed in the 3,000 worlds and the traces of Dao techniques. However, no one could give him an answer as to what the grand beginning universe was like before. Next, he could only deduce it himself. Wu Dao's real body was not completely clueless. After he evolved the grand beginning universe, he began to reorganize his Dao techniques. He called the Yuanwu world supported by the 3,000 great Dao Taiji. In this stage of the Yuanwu world, Yin and Yang had just separated, evolving all things. After that, the 3,000 grand Daos were obliterated, and they transformed into a boundless and vast chaotic universe. In the chaos, Yin, Yang, and Yang were born. Yin and Yang intertwined, forming the 5 elements. This stage was known as Taisu in martial arts. Then, the grand essence universe was destroyed, evolving into a universe without matter, life, or great Dao. There was no light, no darkness, no beginning, and no end. There was only a vague embryonic form. This was a universe with form, but no substance. Wu Dao's real body called this stage grand beginning. After that, an even more ancient universe with origin stones might be born. It was formless and without substance. Not only did it have no substance, but it also did not have any form. Even if one was inside, they could not see, touch, or feel it. Wu Dao's real body called this stage grand beginning. However, no one knew if there was a grand beginning, or what it would be like. The 3,000 worlds were destroyed, and all things were destroyed. In the empty universe, there were no traces of life or sound. Dark, cold, and lonely. Only a small thought slowly groped in the darkness, moving forward alone. Chapter 3379. Pingyang Town, an ordinary border town. On this day, a group of strange people came to the town. These people were dressed differently from ordinary people in the town. Some of them did not even look like humans. They had sharp mouths and monkey cheeks and looked strong. Some of them had extraordinary auras. Some of them looked dignified. Some of them were carefree and unrestrained. This group of people had mysterious origins and unknown identities. However, they had no ill intentions towards Pingyang Town and did not disturb the people in the town. As time passed, the people of Pingyang Town became familiar with the existence of these people. They gradually got used to it. Occasionally, they would greet them when they bumped into each other. Among them, there was also a Taoist priest who knew how to tell stories. He set up a table in the town and held a folding fan in his hand as he told stories nonstop. This Taoist priest was eloquent and eloquent, coupled with the fact that the stories he told were wondrous worlds that the people of Pingyang Town had never heard of before. They were magnificent, and soon attracted a group of people to sit around and listen to the story. In the stories of the storyteller, some people could use sword kinesis flight, some could ride on the clouds, and there were also people with great divine powers who could even burn the sky and boil the sea. Everyone did not know his name and background. They asked but to no avail. They all called him a storyteller. This Taoist priest would tell stories in the town every day. Every time this happened, the people in the town who were free, be it adults or children, they would all rush over to listen. Spring came and autumn passed. Unknowingly, this Taoist priest had been telling stories in Pingyang Town for more than 5 years. This day, a large group of people in Pingyang Town rushed towards a direction. Without asking, they knew that the Taoist priest had started telling stories again. On this day, there were especially many people who came to listen to the story. That was because the Taoist priest's story was coming to an end. Piak. Everyone sat in the middle. The Taoist priest put down the wooden stick and opened his folding fan, saying, "That sacred King Samsara destroyed the trichiliocosm. Everything in the world, and all living beings, were turned into nothingness. This sacred King Samsara is too evil," a child said angrily. Another person also said, "The trichiliocosm was destroyed by him just like that." What happened after that? Did sacred King Araki Takeshi die as well? What about Saint Blood Butterfly? Someone could not help but ask. The Taoist priest slowly sipped his tea and whetted his appetite. Then he slowly said, later on, the Taoist priest didn't say anything. This Araki Takeshi Saint King detonated the grand beginning universe. In the dark and lonely universe, he deduced by himself and finally created the grand beginning universe that was even more ancient. And this absolute beginning universe has swallowed all the 3,000 destroyed worlds, becoming even more vast. Someone sighed and said, "But what's the use of that? Saint King Araki Takeshi is the only one left in this absolute beginning universe. All his old friends are gone. How cruel is this to him?" Everyone nodded in agreement. The Taoist shook his head. Actually, after sacred King Samsara destroyed the 3,000 worlds, he didn't destroy the Earth Book. Instead, he left all the souls in the Earth Book to sacred King Araki Takeshi. This, everyone's expression froze, greatly surprised. The Taoist priest said, "So, with the souls of all the living beings in the 3,000 worlds, sacred King Araki Takeshi revived all the original living beings in the 3,000 worlds, including Araki Takeshi's old friends. But how can the infinite calamity be resolved?" Someone suddenly asked. The Taoist priest smiled and said, "As the creator of the grand beginning universe, sacred King Araki Takeshi can naturally re-establish the laws in this new world. The root of the infinite calamity is the selfishness, and desire of the eternal. So sacred King Araki Takeshi established one of the most important laws. Once a living being becomes a saint, they will lose their self-consciousness and become the great Tao. If you want eternal life, you have to give up all emotions. This way the infinite calamity will be cut off from the root." Someone asked, "Then, what about sacred King Araki Takeshi? He has already become the most powerful existence in the grand beginning universe. Will he lose himself one day and become the second sacred King Samsara? How is that possible?" Another person immediately refuted. Sacred King Araki Takeshi cares about the common people. He established the Wu Dao. With such a bold mind, how can he become sacred King Samsara? That's not necessarily true. The first person said, "Didn't sacred King Samsara want to establish a fair world in the beginning? He wanted to establish the 6 paths of reincarnation to reward the good and punish the evil?" The Taoist priest fell silent at the mention of this. After a while, the Taoist priest slowly said, "Sacred King Araki Takeshi created the grand beginning universe, re-established the primordial world, established the 6 paths, and evolved all living beings. In the end, he cut off his self-consciousness and emotions, turning into the heavenly Tao to protect this new world." Everyone was shocked and cried out in surprise. Without self-consciousness and emotions, it meant that sacred King Araki Takeshi was no longer sacred King Araki Takeshi. That person's worries just now no longer existed. Under a heavenly Tao without self-consciousness and selfish thoughts, the 3,000 great Taoists each had their own duties, and all living beings were equal. In a house in Pingyang Town, Su Zimo woke up slowly and turned over to get up from the bed. He sat in a daze for a long time. The confusion in his eyes gradually dissipated, and he regained his clarity. However, he still did not get up. He seemed to have thought of something, and was a little dazed. After a while, he stood up and pushed the door open. In the courtyard, under the peach blossom tree, a beautiful woman in a blood-red robe was standing there. She looked back and smiled gently. "You're awake?" "Yes." Su Zimo nodded. "You're the last one to wake up in our group." Dayu smiled. Su Zimo heard the faint noise coming from the town and asked, What's going on outside? Dai smiled. Lin Xuanji is telling a story over there. He's at a critical juncture now. Sacred King Samsara destroyed the 3,000 great worlds, and I'm guessing everyone is cursing him. Sacred King Samsara Su Zimo opened his mouth slightly and hesitated. What's wrong? Dai asked softly when she saw Su Zimo walk out of the room with a heavy heart. Su Zimo said, there's a possibility that Sacred King Samsara destroyed the 3,000 great worlds to take revenge for Sacred King life. Coupled with the fact that he was already prepared to die, he no longer had any attachment to the 3,000 great worlds after the death of Sacred King life. However, I understood something earlier on. Perhaps there's another possibility. What? Dai asked. Su Zimo said, Sacred King Samsara has never changed. Right from the beginning, he wanted to realize his and Sacred King life's ideals, and build a world where all living beings are equal. However, he knew that the original 3,000 great worlds were already riddled with holes. Even if he controlled the 3,000 great worlds, he could not change the rules that had existed for many years. The only way to achieve equality in the new world is to destroy the old 3,000 great worlds and rebuild them. Chapter 3380. Hearing this, Dai said, So, he chose to destroy the old world with his own hands, and gave you the chance to create a new world. He also gave you the souls of the Trichiliocosm's races. Su Zimo nodded. Dai said, Back then, your Wu Dao's true body stayed with him in the Holy Ground land for tens of thousands of years. With his eyesight, nothing about Wu Dao's true body could be hidden from him. He didn't attack Wu Dao's true body, perhaps because of that moment. At the mention of this, Su Zimo sighed softly and said, He didn't attack Wu Dao's true body. There's another reason. This was also a scene that Wu Dao's true body saw, after creating the absolute beginning universe, and obtaining more power. Back in the Holy Ground land, when Sacred King Samsara mentioned Sacred King life, he actually skipped an important piece of information. Sacred King life's flesh and blood scattered, and turned into the Trichiliocosm's human race. But Sacred King Samsara didn't mention the whereabouts of Sacred King life's soul. It was impossible for a heavenly Tao Sacred King's soul to disappear without a trace. Even the Chaos Green Lotus had gone through several cycles of reincarnation. Dai looked enlightened and said, You mean? Su Zimo nodded and said, The birth of Wu Dao's true body has always been a mystery. I once wondered why a soul and self-will would be born just by creating Wu Dao and condensing the fruit of Wu Dao. Until Wu Dao's true body created the absolute beginning. Only then did I know that it was the soul of Sacred King life. She gave Wu Dao life. Sacred King life's soul did not enter reincarnation. She had always been searching for her successor, one with great perseverance and courage, one with great wisdom, fearlessness, and a big heart. Only then would there be a glimmer of hope to change the Trichiliocosm. Until Araki Takashi established the Tao and imparted martial arts to all living beings. Wu Dao was born. As for the Life Saint King, he bestowed martial arts with life. Saint King Samsara could see the shadow of Saint King life on Wu Dao's body. However, Wu Dao's original body was not the Life Holy King. Therefore, at some point in time, Saint King Samsara would look at him strangely. Dai said, If that's the case, Chaos Qinglian and the Life Saint King worked together to break the Trichiliocosm, not just to injure the 5 Taisha primordial spirits. The most important thing is to let the soul of the Life Saint King break free, with the help of the 3,000 broken worlds. It's precisely because of this that a variant that has jumped out of the 3 dimensions and isn't part of the 5 elements was created. Su Zimo replied, Only by obtaining the power to break away from the 3,000 worlds would it be possible to create a new world. Dai said, Saint King Samsara naturally knew about Saint King life's intentions. That's why he gave you the chance to create a new world. He trusts you so much because of the Life Saint King. Su Zimo heard this. However, he shook his head and said, Samsara trusts Saint King life, but he doesn't necessarily trust me. Do you still remember what Saint King Samsara said to the Demon Lord before the 3,000 worlds were destroyed? Dai nodded. Su Zimo said, With the demon lord's cultivation, he can't threaten Saint King Samsara at all. However, Saint King Samsara's words to him at that time seemed a little unnecessary. I think that Saint King Samsara's words might have been meant for me. People's hearts change. He was worried that after I created a new world, I would be infatuated with the power and status of the Lord of all souls, the ruler of the three dimensions, and lose myself. That's why he said those words to remind me. Dayu was silent. Fortunately, Su Zimo made his choice in the end. After a moment, Dayu smiled and said, "This is just your guess. I'm afraid only Samsara himself knows what he's thinking." "Yes." Su Zimo also smiled. "Let's go, it's time to leave." Dayu waved and said, "Everyone's waiting for you." Su Zimo stepped forward and walked out of the courtyard hand in hand with Dayu. Arriving on the streets of Pingyang town and looking at everything around him, Su Zimo was in a daze. These were all created by Wu Dao's original body in the new 3,000 worlds based on his memories. Most of them were familiar, but there were some differences as well. A series of hurried running sounds came from behind, getting closer and closer. "Hurry up, the storyteller is almost done with his story." I was so busy that I forgot. I don't know if I can make it in time." A young girl and a young man were running towards them. That voice sounded familiar. Su Zimo looked over instinctively. As the girl ran past the two of them, she turned around inadvertently, and her gaze met with Su Zimo's. Both Su Zimo and the girl were slightly stunned. Instinctively, the girl stopped in her tracks and looked at Su Zimo with a hint of confusion in her eyes. "Mengqi, what's wrong? It'll be too late if you dawdle." The young man tugged at her sleeves and urged. Oh. The girl snapped out of her trance and ran off hurriedly. "What happened to you earlier on?" the young man asked as he ran. Shaking her head, the girl said, "Nothing. It's just that I seem to have seen that green-robed man somewhere before." "Why don't I remember?" the young man teased. "You didn't see him in your dreams, did you?" "Humph." The girl harumphed softly. "You don't say. I did have a dream previously, and I even joined an immortal sect." "Tisk." The young man was disdainful as well. "What's the big deal about that? I even dreamt that I could pluck the stars and roam the four seas." Instantly, the girl was a little disappointed. However, that dream wasn't very good. Su Zimo smiled in relief as he watched the young man and girl leave. The two of them walked side by side for a while more, and saw a rather large residence not far away. A man and a woman stood at the entrance, looking at a child who was slowly learning to walk with doting expressions. "Brother." When he saw the man, Su Zimo's eyes reddened as he murmured softly. The Su Hong before him no longer had the hideous scar on his face, and was already married with a child. As though he sensed something, Su Hong looked over in Su Zimo's direction. When he saw Su Zimo and Meng Qi, Su Hong nodded slightly as a greeting before retracting his gaze. It was clear that he did not recognize Su Zimo. Although Wu Dao's true body created the primordial world and evolved all living beings, the billions of souls experienced such changes and reincarnations. Not everyone's memories could be preserved. It's actually quite good that brother has a new life. Let's not disturb them. Xiaoning's voice sounded from behind. Su Zimo nodded. Su Hong had endured way too much pressure and pain in his life. Perhaps it was a form of relief for him to not have those memories. Su Zimo turned back. Night Spirit stood beside Xiaoning. A group of people walked over. All of them were old friends. Monkey Tiger Lin Zhan, Fairy Ling Long, Hawker Dojin Long Ran, Ming Zhen Momo Nian Chi Kitsune. Yen Beichen walked over with a woman. It was Qin Pian Ran. Everyone looked at Su Zimo, and the smiles in their eyes deepened. Finally, they could not help but burst into laughter without caring about the gazes of others. There was nothing more joyous than the reunion of these old friends. When he heard the laughter, the storyteller happened to put down the wooden block. He surveyed the surroundings and cupped his fists. "This story is over. Let's meet again in the pugilistic world." "I missed a lot and haven't heard it yet." Someone could not help but grumble. The Taoist priest casually threw down a thick, ancient book and said, "Everything I've said is inside. Take it and read it." With that said, the Taoist priest pushed through the crowd and ran toward Su Zimo and the others. Everyone rushed forward and picked up the ancient book. Someone shouted at the back view of the Taoist priest, "Hey, storyteller, why doesn't this book have a name?" The Taoist priest slapped his forehead. This ancient book was originally written by the previous storyteller of Enigma Palace, because of Araki Takashi's establishment of the Tao and imparting martial arts to all living beings. The previous storyteller once said that he did not write the name of the biography because he did not know what Su Zimo's future accomplishments would be like. If he was unable to complete this biography, he could only rely on the next storyteller. The biography was passed down to Lin Xuanji and continued to be recorded. However, the name of the biography was still blank. The Taoist priest was in a hurry to meet everyone and could not be bothered to think about it. He then said, "I don't know how to write it either. I'll leave it to you guys." Everyone was slightly disappointed. After listening for so long, it ended just like that. Everyone felt a sense of regret and disappointment in their hearts. After taking a few steps, the Taoist priest paused and turned back to look at the people. However, before the Holy King Araki Takashi in the book transformed into the heavenly Tao, he left behind a sentence in this world. "No one in this world can live forever, and it's the same for me. In the cycle of the heavenly Tao, there are ups and downs. I only hope that the Wu Tao of the world will prosper, and everyone will be like dragons. His righteousness will last forever." Some of them were emotional when they heard that. Some of them were already tearing up. Wu Tao was never a single person. Instead, he was a group of people. He was a civilization and a belief. More than that, he was an indomitable spirit. Even if night falls, as long as Wu Tao's spirit is not extinguished, he will become a spark that will illuminate the mountains and rivers one day. The Holy King Araki Takashi had already become a supreme existence that surpassed all living beings and the heavenly Tao. He could be said to be the ruler of the three realms. However, he did not miss it. Instead, he chose to establish the cycle of reincarnation, open up the primordial world and rebuild order. He returned the trichiliocosm to the living beings of the 10,000 races. Only then did he give all living beings in the world the chance to be like dragons. I heard the storyteller mention a kind of divination before. Using 9, seeing a group of dragons without a leader, is auspicious. Does it also have the same meaning? When one cultivates to that level, he is already the ruler of the three realms. No one can shake his position. However, it is the most difficult to restrain one's heart and give up everything. The Holy King Araki Takashi transformed into the heavenly Tao and his soul dissipated. However, he left behind the most precious thing to inspire future generations and pass it down for generations. That is the eternal and indestructible spirit of Wu Tao. Storyteller. A child seemed to have thought of something. He squeezed out of the crowd and chased after the storyteller for a few steps. He panted slightly and looked at the storyteller's back as he left. He shouted, "Your book is called The Eternal Holy King, okay?" "Okay." The storyteller replied with a smile. With his back facing the crowd, he waved goodbye and walked side by side with the people in front of him. They gradually disappeared at the end of the road. The book ended. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.